Welcome to the Chris Hanna Show. Welcome to another episode of the Chris Hanna Show. Today we're talking about finding your why. What's your reason for doing what you do? It doesn't have to be necessarily from a work perspective, but personally, why do you do what you do? What drives you? What motivates you? There's a lot of talk about why nowadays. For example, why do businesses do what they do? Why do customers care? Why are employees so disengaged? If you're a leader, you need to also focus on your why and decide why you do what you do. What are the actions that you take and why did you take them? When we talk about figuring out what your why is, we're trying to talk about in determining why you do what you do. It's essential to figure out what's motivating you. What's your purpose? Do you have an idea of what you're truly meant to do, or maybe why you want to do certain activities? Some people might say that their purpose for the work that they do, as an example, is all about money, right? All they care about is getting a paycheck every single week. That's the only thing that drives their purpose. Sure, you could say that might be true for most people, right? But then it can get so mindless and tedious, and it's the same old thing day after day. And before you know it, 30 years go by, and you're retired, and you look back and kind of wonder, what was it all for? Is it all just so you can enjoy life at the end after retirement? So you got to figure out what's important to you and what drives you. Now, some people might get a level of personal satisfaction from maybe being a certain role, or maybe being a leader. Others maybe have found themselves in certain positions through a series of steps, and I guess one could argue possible missteps as well. I've seen some people thrust into certain positions only to regret it. I know that I've seen some people who've become leaders and they want to become individual contributors. But you need to understand that there are certain reasons for the role that you are in your life and why that might be the case. But it comes down to knowing your why. So in my career, I've always been in a leadership position in a variety of different locations and businesses. And I know that my why, my reason for being in a leadership position, is because I enjoy a certain level of autonomy, is the truth. I think there's a certain level of autonomy and freedom that comes with being a leader. I've always had these entrepreneurial tendencies, even since I was a little kid, where I'd be the one hustling on the weekend or on recess, selling hockey cards or pogs or whatever it is to people. And so I always knew I wanted to do my own thing. And so being a leader gives you that capability to do that, and working for an organization gives you in that safe place, as long as you're following within certain parameters of what the organizational culture and the processes and policies are all about. And so at times throughout my career, when I've been a manager, I've been given the freedom to do work as I see fit. I've had some great bosses over the years who've really given me the ball and let me run with it. But having that entrepreneurial spirit from when I was younger, it gives me the ability to also take on challenges. And I get to build teams that produce an outstanding result. Now, I also think that driving change is really fun for me. I've always loved developing a strategy and seeing a plan work. And if it doesn't work, being okay and comfortable to change it up and switch up things. And I think also being a leader is something that gives you the ability also to help people with their own personal growth. So I think part of my why comes down to knowing my strengths and my weaknesses ultimately. I like to work with teams who can help fill in the gaps that I have. There are areas where I know I am strong, but I know that there are certainly areas where I am weak. And having an opportunity to work in your strength zone is important for me. So working as part of a team is vital to make sure that myself and others are most engaged, because we fill in each other's gaps. So I also don't want to be miserable. I don't want to do things I don't want to do. And that's part of my why, is ultimately just trying to be happy. But what's your why? Far too many people are miserable at work. They're miserable because they're working in a role that doesn't match their purpose. It doesn't provide them any sorts of energy or fulfillment. There also might be skills that they have or strengths that are there, but they're not utilized in their current position. So it's a mismatch. I think it happens far too often in many organizations, and I've talked about it in previous podcast episodes about underutilized talent. It is an epidemic that is plaguing many organizations, is that there are so many people who have all these gifts and all these talents, and they're not being used to the fullest extent. And sometimes they're just completely ignored. So people need to figure out what are those strengths that they have, and how can they best leverage them. And if they can't leverage them where they're at, maybe it's time to look elsewhere. So I think my closing thoughts here is that to be indeed happy and engaged at work, everyone needs to know what they're good at and how they can flourish, doing what they want to do. But it ultimately starts with understanding and finding your why. What's your purpose? What drives you? What makes you happy? When you figure that out, that's when you can actually really take it to the next level. That's when you can be the version of yourself that you truly want to be.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Chris Hanna Show. As always, the latest episodes are available to listen and subscribe to on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow The Chris Hanna Show on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Twitter. For more resources and solutions, including blog posts, toolkits, ebooks, speaking sessions, and more, visit chrishanna.ca today. We look forward to connecting again with you soon for another episode of The Chris Hanna Show.